You want to do thermometers next or heating blankets? We'll do both today. Which one you want to start with? Huh? Thermometer. All right. All of you have your kits from 205. If you do not have your kits, we will give you the kits. If anything was broken or lost, no problem. We'll replace it. In fact, if you want some redundant stuff, we'll give it to you. It's not like a rationing kind of situation here. We're not going to deal with that right now. You haven't been given these yet, right? So these are called multimeters. Okay, you'll learn. These are not hard to use, and you'll become very comfortable with them by the end. But it turns out that these multimeters also have the ability to measure temperature. So they come with this little thing here that you attach to it. I know you can't see it from a distance, and then you will set it to oh, it doesn't have battery. All right, so we'll use our imagination, right? You'll plug it in, right? Actually, you couldn't tell it wasn't on, so I'll just say it's on, right? We plug it in, and you'll set it to a particular setting that says measure temperature. Now it's only going, that it will not work unless you connect this doohickey to it. So what is this? Okay? Once you connect it, it will show the temperature, right? Let's talk Celsius, right? The room maybe is 25 degrees, 24 degrees Celsius. All of a sudden, it starts to show 37 degrees Celsius, closer to the body. Okay. This is not a complicated to operate instrument, okay? Now, if I were to grab onto the instrument here and say, well, I mean, you know the answer, right? What temperature would it show? Would it show 25 room temperature or 37 body temperature? It's not a hard question. I'm just going to go through this obvious thing. What would you say? What's that? Room temperature, right? Okay, because I'm not grabbing the thing. Makes sense. Okay, so I'm just going to grab it here. Now what is it going to show? Room temperature or body temperature? Room temperature. You know something. You know the first and maybe most important principle in biomedical instrumentation. There is something special at the end of this, right? And the place that it measures the temperature is right here. And so this is where I need to do it. And if I want to measure the temperature of under my son's armpit, I don't put this under it. I don't need to put the cable under it. I just need to put this under it. You already know that. You know that there's something very special about the thing at the end. The thing at the end is the sensor. And the whole thing is the instrument. And this, sometimes the simple things need to be taught. You're going to see that from me. Sometimes the simple things need to be talked about because they're almost so simple you can miss it. And yet they're so important, right? But they're so simple. Look, right? I need to measure, you know what's not going on here? I think I know what's not going on. But anyways, I'm not going to fix it now. I need to measure my son's temperature, right? This part, right, has to go right under his armpit, right? Not this part, obviously. Okay, this is the sensor. So when we talk about measurement devices, on this end, all right, we need to be aware that there is one component that we're going to be calling the sensor, right? And the thing that we are measuring must be in contact with the sensor, right? And there's your first principle of biomedical instrumentation, all right? Now, okay, sounds good. But then, why not just put it all together? Like, why is I mean, again, I'm going to ask you a very obvious question, right? Why is the display here and the sensor here, right? Why not just put it all together? What's the obvious answer? It's not a trick question. Just want to hear you say it. Yeah. Oh, if it's yes, you're saying the right thing. Even more basic, like let's say I'm measuring the armpit. Why can't it just be one piece? Because you couldn't see the display. It's so obvious, right, that you almost have to say it. And so we have a situation here, which is very common in biomedical instrumentation, where you have the sensor, and you just identified another critical part of the device, the display, right? But we don't put them together. All right. So we have the sensor. We have another thing here, which we're going to call the display. And they're not in the same position, right? They're connected by this, okay? This is just a wire, okay? It's just a wire. So maybe there's more than one wire in here, but just a wire. So we're going to put that there's a wire here, all right? Now, there's something else here, and that is what I'm going to call a circuit. Maybe you want to call that the device. I don't know, maybe you want to call the whole thing the device, right? But you are very well aware, right, that between this sensor and something showing up on the screen, there's something inside of here, like a little computer that's doing some kind of work. Now, you now understand that in this case, all right, there is something in here at the end that is called the sensor, all right? Here you have the display. There is a wire. I promise you, if you broke it open, right, I promise you, you would find a wire running from here to here, right? But you'll also find that there's a little circuit here. I mean, obviously, how would the display work otherwise, right? So there has to be a bit of a circuit here, right? Now, let's say some other things that are incredibly obvious. What does the display show? It shows the thing we are measuring. Right? I mean, right? That's what it shows, right? So the display shows the thing you are measuring. And if it is a temperature meter, the thing that you express to see on the display is temperature, right? It might be temperature. However, if it is a heart rate meter, well, right? You go to the doctor wants to measure your heart rate, and they hook it up, and then they're like 37 degrees, and you're like, I need a new doctor, right? So if it's a heart rate measuring device, then you have a heart rate, and the list goes on and on, right? The blood. So when we talk about what a device does, when we say that this is a blood pressure measuring device, then obviously, in a way that's so obvious, but that the thing on the display is the thing that it's made to do. Now, in this case, it actually gives you two things: pulse and, right? Pulse, by pulse they mean heart rate, and oxygen, right? So you can do a 2-for-1. Okay. Now here is the big idea. The sensor determines what the device can measure. 100%, if you want to put an emphasis on it. What that means that is if this device is a temperature sensor, the fact that it's a temperature sensor is not because we're using a black and white display versus a color display or the battery choice we made, right? It's because the sensor here isn't just any sensor, it is a temperature sensor. And if instead of a temperature sensor, it was a COVID sensor, then you have to spit in something, you dip it in, then so we will understand in this class how the sensor works. and why it does that. In fact, by the end of today, that concept will be clear. Okay? That concept will be clear by the end of today, right? So it's almost like by the end of today, I'm going to give you half of what I need you to get in this class, and the rest is going to be details. Perfect. There is a circuit in here, right? That circuit is made of resistors and capacitors and obviously the display as well, right? If you want to know, therefore, how to make a biomedical instrument that does anything, or you want to be able to explain how a biomedical instrument works, right, that does anything, you need to understand the sensor, right? You need to understand the circuit, right, that it's sitting here, and obviously there's going to be a display as well. And you will do all that in this class. Multiple times. You're going to start with very, very easy, right? You're going to get really comfortable with the easy. Then we're going to do a little less easy and then a little less easy, and each piece will be adding. And by the end of it, you'll know everything about how this thing works. So you'll be like, wow, it wasn't that complicated. No, it wasn't. Though it seems like it was, right? It seems complicated, but it's not. I brought another temperature meter. Let's see if this one works. Good question. Sure looks like it, right? Okay. So you're working at Meat Thermometer Incorporated, all right? And this product here, you know, it's made by Apple, and they sell it for $1,000. And Meat Thermometer Incorporated says, let's undercut them. Okay, you're an engineer, right? You're an engineer. I want you to I really just want you to reverse engineer this product, right? Now, you've never seen it before, right? You say, okay, I got it, right? What are the components here? Well, sensor, circuit, display, right? Where's the sensor? Here. Now, in this case, you might be deceived because obviously the sensor looks like it's used to stab someone. I guess that's why you thought it was a meat thermometer, right? And I don't see, and the color here is the same as the color here, but you know that there's something here. There has to be a sensor here. We'll talk about what that is. And here we have our circuit and display, right? Right? So what's in this tube? It's a wire. You broke it open, you'd see there's a wire, right? Now you're going to say, but hold on. This one's floppy and this one's hard and looks like a metal. Sure, right? Because this one I need to measure my son's temperature, and this one I'm making a steak and I need to stick it, right? So there are clearly things I'm not showing you here, like whether whether this is inside. Okay, that's true, right? And we'll talk about them, but you can see how ultimately, at some level, it's the same principle. This, and this, right? Yes, they have different kind of, this one's nice and rubber, right? And this one I have a switch like this. And this one there's only one button, right? Because mom and dads are easily confused, right? And this has a switch. You can go between Celsius and Fahrenheit. Whatever, okay? Yes, there are details. But I want you to remember the principles are like really, really the same. And we'll learn about what those principles are. Okay. Yeah.
So I have a question about that, right? So for the circuit component of it, we'll be using our boards, right? Those are obviously bulkier than these devices that we've seen.
Correct.
So would it be fair to say that the circuit logic is analogous, but perhaps the implementation is like different for the device?
The circuit logic is identical.
Okay.
Identical, and yes, there is a difference in the process you would use to fabricate this, and and as you are manually sticking things like that, right? Which topic? Please add anything if I'm missing out on anything. Okay, that's a good question. All right, that's a good question. Let's talk about the heating blanket.